Hey guys, it's Cam here. Welcome back to the Build Room. This week we are back from Todas in the Park 2023. So in today's episode, we're going to take a walk around the car and see how it looked on the day. We've got some clips from the show itself, and then we're going to come back and talk about what's next for Doofa Now here. So stick around and check it out. All right, so for those of you that have watched Instagram or were down at the show, you already know what our livery looks like, but let's talk about what it took to get it to where it is now. So we'll start with the back end. So yeah, on the rear of the car, if we flip back to some old footage, we can see the rear panels used to be a metallic silver, a sort of a mid-metallic silver, and they were gloss coated. And obviously while I was cleaning this thing up, a lot of rust converter and stuff got all over them. But it was actually just quicker to paint them, and that was going to give me a better finish, so that's what I chose to do. In order to do that though, I had to pull out all of the trim pieces and the lights themselves. If you recall, we coated the entire bare metal rear end in KBS rust seal, just to make sure it would never rust again. And while that held up to the elements, it did have some staining as well. So what I did was I just got a Scotch-Brite and I Scotch-Brite the whole area. Now, obviously you wouldn't normally do that, but we are going to be priming over this at some point soon, so Scotch-Brite was an appropriate mechanism. Once that was all sorted out, I could look at the trim panels, which of course were not in good shape. They had cracks where these things normally crack out, where the two top outside retaining nuts sit, always cracked there. So what I did was I used what I'd learnt with the plastic welding of the BMW bumper. I welded some mesh in above those cracks, and then I filled over it with some flexible putty, sanded it back, it looked pretty good, so then I could just prime the entire lot. And this time I chose to go over the chrome in the centers of the light and just leave the stainless steel trim and the chrome trim on the outside. And then flat black, and obviously that is what they look like now. For stage 2, we're going a little bit further with this. This was very rushed job, so it's not as neat as I'd like. It's also a bit low here. I took out too much material and then didn't fill it back up enough. And the area where the badge is a bit blank, so we're gonna do something with that. But yeah, it looked passable for the day, which is all we really needed because, you know, we're not on a high level of polish here. Now, if we move around and have a look at this side, coming from the front. All right, so this side, I wanted to have a little bit of a throwback to the old livery. So we've got the shark decal there. This is matte this time, which is not particularly exciting, but the old one was gloss, which is why I actually got a reprint in matte, so I had it lying around that I could use. At the back, I just tried to do sort of like something interesting because the back was a bit bland and I didn't want to go for the full aviation theme. It also helped to cover up the rust underneath the fuel flap, which they all get. I didn't want to try and fix that before the event because I don't want to really try and do it with the fuel cap there. It's going to require some welding. So a little bit of a more involved fix there. I did throw, after the show actually, I threw the tail numbers on from the last livery, just because, you know, it added a little bit of interest for some photos. But yeah, pretty basic on this side. I didn't swap out the doors on either side. I just ran out of time, and to be honest, the doors weren't in that bad a shape. The shark mouth covers up the dent in this door, and then we've got a livery on the other side that covers up some of the other damage. On the bonnet, we've got the TBR logo front and center. For those of you that might seem familiar to, if you were watching for a long time when I used to finish the shows with the workbench behind me, that is the same sticker as off my sign. Again, I had a spare one. I decided just to throw it on, and then we did some coloring around it. This is bare metal in here, but the black and the red are just plasti dip. So, you know, the stripes at the back and the stripes here and the livery on this side, all plasti dip. Really no other mods there. I didn't really want to go overboard with it because this side's pretty intense, so I was really just trying to tie colors together. So black and red on the bonnet matches in with the shark jaws and the livery at the back. And then we come around this side for the piece de resistance. And that is the full chap spec Rising Sun all the way down the side. So this here is all plasti dip as well. I do have nice sharp lines. We'll talk about how you can do that with plasti dip in a second. In terms of the door, it is the old door. The top section was always reasonable. It just had that really heavily damaged section on the back. So what I ended up doing there, I basically turned this into the Sarah Lee of bog jobs on the door. It was just layer upon layer upon layer to try and get it flat with the metal of the door. I tried to keep the area that I was filling as small as I possibly could, but Given the extent of the damage, that was actually really difficult. It ended up being quite a large area that we're coating here. And I think in the end, I did about 3 layers of bog, which was enough to get it flat, but it's certainly far from perfect. So yeah, covering it up with a little bit of primer here. And if you see the edge of the door here, basically it is metal all the way around the edge. And then as soon as you come in about, I don't know, 4 or 5 mil, then it's bog all the way through. So this is the line I was working to. I got it as flat as I possibly could from that. But yeah, just smoothed it out, gave it a coat of primer, and then just put on some silver paint, which is what this is. So, you know, it kind of looks like a cloud behind the sun, which I'm not too unhappy with. It's not a super standout, but it's certainly a lot better. There's no way I could have done these stripes or anything like that with the uneven surface that was there. You do need a smooth surface to get a smooth line, and the lines would have accentuated the damage even further, which would have been horrible. So yeah, lots of bog in there, lots of sanding. I got to be quite brutal and creative with some rust down here. That had all pillowed out because of rust, and so basically I just took a hammer to it and bashed it right out. Plenty of rust, and knowing that I'm not keeping this door in this state anyway, then I just filled that with bog and sanded that down as well. The only real drawback here is that when I was fixing this door, I was hyper fixated on getting a nice flat surface. I didn't really pay much attention. The door itself, the previous repair is not correct at all. So you can see this gap here. Now this area is not damaged. It's a nice original panel. So they're supposed to be fairly flat in this zone and then curve and curve. And whoever repaired the door just put a curved radius through the whole thing. So yeah, there's no real swage line here at the back or hip. And yeah, there is a big gap there. So it's all right when you're looking at it from the front of the car, but it was a bit embarrassing at the show when I noticed that, to think that, yeah, that is the door gap halfway down. So yeah, it was a mediocre repair at best, and it is gonna have to be obviously redone, whatever I do with this door in the future. But there are some other dodgy repairs here as well, so I'm not too cut about it. In terms of the plastic dip, so the plastic dip was kind of cool. And to get this effect, being that it had to be fairly geometric, was I just got a plastic lid and stuck a screwdriver through it. I then popped that into, I think it was that hole there, drew around it, and that gave me an inner interface. I wasn't super happy with that, so I actually tied some builder's line onto my pen, and then with the screwdriver still in that hole, I was able to run around the edges and have a constant distance from that center point. And with the clearly circular circle in the middle, that helped me gauge the distance. Once that circle was cut out and marked with pen, what I did was I taped out all of the lines to where I want them to go, and I made sure that areas like this here and this here, sort of, we had a gap in the middle because I didn't want to run the red too far down the cast. I used the blue clean line tape from Bunnings to do the edges, although that's not the secret. Once they were in, I just filled them in with cheapy tape in the middle. And when you're putting all that tape on, you have to think about the way you're going to remove it, because you have to remove it while the paint is still wet. But then it was really important to only spray the main sections within these lines, right? And not to get too much paint on the edge, because once this starts to firm up, when you peel the tape off, it wants to peel the paint with it. So you can see here, the paint is very close to the lines, but on the edges, it's quite light if there's any paint there at all. And what that meant was that after I'd done a couple of coats inside areas, then I could go through and paint small areas, remove the tape off them, and then keep spraying all the way around the car, taking the tape off as I went. And Kelly actually helped me with this. She was really, really helpful in, basically, I had paint all over my hands, so I've got to be careful about touching the bare metal, and really hard to get tape off. So she played my nurse practitioner for the event and pulled the tape off my hands, put it in a bag, and kept everything nice and clean. But yeah, it came out really awesome. It's amazing what you can do with Plasti Dip, and I know that a lot of people abuse Plasti Dip and, you know, have made really, really shoddy looking paint jobs on full cars, but I think for accent stuff, for those of you that have been following the channel, I did the back of my A90 Supra, and I did stripes on the side, and man, those things looked absolutely awesome. They're better than I could have done with a wrap, because the Supra has such complex curves, and at the end of the day, I had no concerns about peeling that off later when I either wanted to change it, and I did change it a couple of times from memory, or when I sold it. So yeah, that's pretty much how it went to the show, other than the tail number. Let's have a look at some of the other cars there, because man, there were some amazing cars there, and I did get a really good opportunity this time. I actually slept before the events. Last year I was an absolute zombie. I distinctly remember, or don't remember, talking to people for 5 minutes, saying hi, and then reapproaching them and saying hi again when they came to look at the car, as if I'd never met them before, because my brain was just not storing new memories. So at least this time I got to really have some good conversations with some of you and talk about the car, talk about the cars that you had. A couple of guys that came along had some really, really nice TA22s, RA28s and things like that. So yeah, really cool to see the cars. Let's have a look at what's at the show now, and then we'll come back and talk about what's next. right, so yeah, that was a pretty cool bunch of cars. One of the things that sort of struck me at the show was a lot of really cool engine conversions. Seeing 2Js where they shouldn't be, and a lot of 1UZs. I think there's a sneaky twin turbo. Heaps of really cool cars, and heaps of cars that had a lot of time that had gone into making them look really pristine in terms of their presentation as well. So yeah, overall, Toyotas in the Park. Obviously, if you're a Toyota guy, it's kind of where all the cool Toyotas hang out. But yeah, apart from a really good collection of cars, also a really good collection of people. So, you know, there was a lot of really friendly and engaged people coming up during the day and having a chat. The other car owners that I got out and talked to were all, you know, really open with what they'd done to their cars, and everyone wanted to share, you know, standard cool stuff, good behavior for people that were just really interested in cars. So yeah, that leads us into the next question, which is what happens to this thing now? So let's have a closer look. Now, although it is really quite a bit of a shame for me to do all this work and get all this set up and then remove it after a single show, that is what we're gonna do. So once I finish up this episode, I will start stripping this down. In terms of the livery that I showed you in the last episode, that is still the plan. In the background, not only have I been working on doors, and I'm starting to assemble a graveyard of guards and doors here, all of which have fairly serious problems. This one is going to be saved. I actually did some heat shrinking on the bottom of it. I'll show you that. That was a massive failure, but I think we can all learn something from it. Yeah, there is still work to do on this. We need to sort out the doors. In terms of the bare metal finish, I've decided that is going to go. Really, because in order to keep the bare metal, there's just too many other compromises that I have to make in terms of the fit and finish of this thing. So if I'm going to go to the trouble of painting the whole car, I do want it to be reasonably nice. We're not going for, you know, concourse standard here, but I would like to be able to fix things like this using a little bit of body filler. Similarly, you know, we're going to have to take the screen out so I can fix this. And once you start, you know, you start welding next to this, we're going to ruin this brass here. There's other areas along here that we're going to need to fix too. So this is going to be a little bit patchy along the front. There's also areas like this leaded area here. You know, that was going to be bare metal in the plan, and I was trying to figure out a way to cover it up, but it just wasn't going to look good. So I would have had to have clear coated this, and it really would have stood out quite badly once it had had clear coat, you know, full gloss clear coat over the top of it. We've still got some outstanding rust. The bottom area of here, you can't really tell, but you know, there is some dodgy bogged up rust at the bottom here. And then one of the things that I didn't get to do on the day for the show was I do have some sneaky aero hidden about. That might have been floating around in various episodes if you've got a keen eye, but yeah, I won't go through what it is now, but we are going to be adding an aero package to this. So yeah, the next video is basically going to be stripping this all down, uncovering any other mess and dirt that we're going to have to deal with. We're also going to try and remove all this plasti dip. This is a thin layer of plasti dip, so I'm not sure how cleanly it's going to come off. Hopefully it'll be interesting for you guys to see just how easily or difficult it is to remove this sort of stuff that I didn't go crazy and put 700 coats on so that it peels off like leather. And then we will get this into etch primer. So that'll be a massive step, not only for obviously avoiding future corrosion, and there is a couple of little bits, you know, Dave was a great wingman on the day, but you know, you put your cup here and you get a rust mark. And you know, on the back of the boot where I was opening and closing all the day, just my finger oils started to rust that area, but you know, none of that's a big deal. This all has to be treated with rust converter again and Scotch-Brite it all down, really just one last time to get the very last of the rust before we seal it all up with that 2K etch. And then after that, we can start the body work. So yeah, I hope you guys like the albeit very temporary livery. You know, it was a fair amount of work to do for one show, but I think it was worth it in the end. It was a lot of fun, and it's nice to see just different looks on the car. Based on all the cool cars that were at Toyotas in the Park, I am 100% motivated, especially seeing Brett's super clean RA28. Very, very keen to get this thing sorted in a way that isn't as, I don't know, roadkill or grungy as this one. But yeah, that is where we're gonna leave it for today. So standard stuff. I am going to link to the full Violet Crumble series up here, and YouTube's gonna stuff some content down here. Other than that, I just wanna say thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on The Build Room. Bye for now.